The Galactic Empire had long prided itself on the peace it maintained across known space, a stability that had endured for 4,000 years. Through a network of powerful alliances, rigorous trade regulations, and an imposing military presence, the Empire governed with an iron hand softened by diplomatic finesse. Species under its banner enjoyed prosperity and order, a life free from the chaos of war. For generations, this peace was seen as the Empire's greatest achievement, a testament to its control and the harmonious structure it had created. Any threats to this stability were swiftly neutralized, and over time, the galaxy settled into an era where conflict seemed inconceivable. In this meticulously managed order, humanity was a relatively new addition. Their integration into the Empire had been unremarkable. They entered quietly, adapting to the established systems without resistance. Humanity played by the rules, taking their place among the Empire's many member species with little notice. To the Empire, humans were seen as cooperative, unlikely to disrupt the status quo. They participated in the Empire's economy, contributed to scientific advancements, and took part in galactic councils, though their influence remained limited. This small role suited the Empire's expectations, as they regarded humanity as just another compliant species within their expansive hierarchy. But beneath this outward compliance, humanity began to notice the rigid structure that defined life in the Empire. Every aspect of their development was regulated, their decisions confined by protocols designed to keep all species in line with the Empire's vision. The peace, while stable, was restrictive. Humanity, known for its adaptability and drive, found itself chafing under these constraints. Decisions regarding trade, defense, and even cultural expression had to pass through layers of bureaucracy, with any hint of autonomy met with subtle but effective discouragement. To humanity, this peace began to feel less like harmony and more like a carefully maintained leash. Over time, these restrictions became more than a minor irritation. Human leaders started to voice their concerns in diplomatic circles, raising questions about the Empire's policies and the limitations they imposed on member species. However, their concerns were met with polite dismissal. The Empire's officials, accustomed to obedience, viewed these concerns as trivial, easily brushed aside. To them, the peace was sacrosanct, and any questioning of its structure was unnecessary, even disruptive. They assumed humanity would eventually accept the system as it was, just as other species had done before them. Yet this dismissive response only deepened humanity's dissatisfaction. Humanity's frustration grew as they witnessed how the Empire prioritized control over the genuine well-being and autonomy of its members. While peace reigned, it came at the expense of freedom. The galaxy's prosperity was a curated illusion, with every species adhering to a uniform set of rules that benefited the Empire's elite more than the collective whole. Humanity began to see the cracks in this so-called harmony, recognizing the underlying currents of discontent that simmered quietly among other species. Yet most lacked the will or the power to challenge the system openly, resigned to their roles in the Empire's grand design. As these insights took root, debates sparked within humanity's leadership. They questioned whether they could thrive within the Empire's rigid framework, or if their true potential was being stifled. Some argued for adaptation, believing that working within the system was preferable to risking conflict. Others, however, felt that the time had come for a more decisive stance. For them, this peace was not peace at all. It was a suppression of identity, an erasure of ambition, and a denial of humanity's right to self-determination. The discussions grew heated, as each faction weighed the costs of compliance against the risks of defiance. This internal struggle reached a tipping point when humanity's leaders realized that reform from within was unlikely. The Empire's structure was built to resist change, to maintain its vision of order at all costs. Attempts at reform were met with bureaucratic delays, ambiguous responses, and thinly veiled threats. Humanity's voice, they discovered, was being systematically silenced, their perspectives ignored by those who saw them as minor participants in a greater scheme. The realization struck deep. Within the Empire, their future was bound to stagnation, and their ambitions would never be fully realized under the weight of the Empire's rules. Gradually, the idea of open defiance began to take shape. It was a shocking notion, even to those who advocated for it. The Empire had maintained peace for millennia. The thought of challenging such a force was daunting. Yet, the conviction grew that their freedom was worth the risk. Humanity's history was one of resilience, adaptability, and an unyielding drive to carve its own path, even against insurmountable odds. To them, this was a matter of principle, a declaration that they would not be controlled, that they would not sacrifice their identity for the sake of enforced stability. The decision to break away was not taken lightly. Human leaders knew the consequences they would face. A challenge to the Empire's authority would be seen as a threat to the entire structure of galactic peace, a peace upheld by fear and compliance rather than true unity. But the alternative, a future of silent submission, of slow erosion of their culture and autonomy, was no longer acceptable. Humanity resolved to make a stand, fully aware of the repercussions and the uncertainty that lay ahead. The choice was clear: freedom, even if it came at a great cost. Preparations began in secret, as humanity's leadership planned their next steps with careful precision. Messages were passed through secure channels, alliances formed, and resources amassed. They knew that this decision would not only change their own fate but potentially reshape the galaxy. Humanity, once content to remain unnoticed, was about to announce itself with a clarity that could not be ignored. They understood that there would be no turning back. When the time came, they would make their intentions known, shattering the illusion of peace and demanding their right to self-determination. And so, humanity stood on the brink of a choice that would echo across the galaxy. Their resolve had crystallized, driven by the belief that a life without freedom was no life at all. Within humanity, the decision to challenge the Galactic Empire stirred a storm of debate and reflection. The Empire's rule had provided stability, prosperity, and security, qualities that most species accepted without question. Yet, as humanity's leaders evaluated the cost of this peace, it became clear that what they had initially seen as beneficial had grown into a confining barrier. The sense of restriction, of lives lived under the shadow of a system that controlled every aspect of existence, had reached a breaking point. The uniformity imposed by the Empire clashed with humanity's core values: autonomy, self-expression, and the freedom to forge their own path. Conversations within humanity's highest councils took on a new urgency. Leaders and thinkers debated what it truly meant to live under the Empire. They reviewed years of interactions, re-evaluating decisions that had once seemed innocuous but now felt like steps toward erasure. The human spirit, known for its resilience and adaptability, now faced a different kind of challenge, a choice between the comfort of security and the uncertainties of freedom. To those in favor of rebellion, the Empire's peace was a gilded cage, a system that presented itself as benevolent but ultimately sought to control and assimilate. A growing faction within humanity argued that they had outgrown the Empire's limitations. These advocates pointed out that while the Empire was undeniably powerful, it was also rigid, slow to adapt, and suspicious of any deviation from its established norms. Humanity's own potential, they argued, was being wasted within such a system. Their creativity, drive, and willingness to push boundaries had become sources of tension rather than progress. This faction saw the Empire's control not as a source of stability, but as a stifling force that extinguished individuality and innovation. Opposition to these ideas came from those who feared the Empire's wrath. They argued that humanity had only just gained a foothold in the galaxy, and challenging the Empire could undo generations of progress. These leaders acknowledged the limitations but believed that reform from within was still possible, that humanity's position in the Empire could be leveraged to enact gradual change. They feared that open defiance would result in catastrophic consequences, an inevitable clash with a force that had known no significant resistance for thousands of years. To them, survival within the Empire was preferable to the risks of rebellion. Yet, the advocates for independence were persuasive. They pointed to other species who had quietly voiced similar frustrations, though none had dared to act. These murmurs of discontent from other member civilizations painted a picture of widespread but unspoken dissatisfaction. Humanity's leaders realized that they were not alone in their grievances. Rather, they represented a growing sentiment within the Empire, a collective desire for greater autonomy, the right to shape their own destinies without interference. They argued that if humanity took a stand, it could inspire others to seek change as well. As these internal debates intensified, humanity's leadership also had to consider the practical implications of challenging the Empire. They began to assess their resources, strategizing ways to prepare for the likely confrontation. Quietly, without drawing attention, they started to mobilize and coordinate their scattered forces. It was a delicate balance. They needed to build their defenses and secure alliances without alarming the Empire's surveillance networks. Human engineers and strategists worked tirelessly, devising plans that would allow them to withstand an empire accustomed to swift and decisive suppression of dissent. The stakes were high, and humanity's leaders knew they were facing an opponent of immense power and reach. The Empire had perfected its methods of control over thousands of years, with a vast network of military and diplomatic resources at its disposal. However, humanity had something the Empire lacked: adaptability and a willingness to embrace unconventional tactics. Rather than matching the Empire's overwhelming force, humanity focused on asymmetric strategies, aiming to counter the Empire's predictable tactics with ingenuity and surprise. This approach became the backbone of their preparations, a way to offset the Empire's advantages with methods it wouldn't anticipate. As their plans took shape, humanity's leaders prepared a message to the Empire, one that would make their intentions unmistakably clear. They crafted a declaration that would not only serve as a formal statement of defiance, but as a rallying cry for all species who shared their longing for autonomy. It was a message that would resonate across the galaxy, a call for freedom and self-determination that would pierce the Empire's carefully maintained illusion of unity. The declaration would outline humanity's grievances, their refusal to accept subjugation, and their commitment to charting their own future. The timing of the declaration was crucial. Humanity's leaders chose a moment when the Empire's attention was divided, distracted by routine matters of governance and maintenance of peace in distant sectors. It was a calculated move, intended to give humanity a slight but meaningful advantage, a precious window in which to establish their position before the Empire's full focus turned upon them. They knew that this was a fleeting opportunity, that once the Empire grasped the depth of humanity's intent, it would respond with overwhelming force. But for humanity, this was a necessary risk. As the day approached, humanity's leaders finalized their preparations with a resolve that had been tempered by months of debate, planning, and sacrifice. They knew that their declaration would shock the galaxy, that it would mark them as the first species in millennia to openly challenge the Empire's authority. But the choice had been made, and the course was set. Humanity was ready to stand against a power that had ruled unquestioned for so long, to show the galaxy that peace without freedom was not a peace worth keeping. When the declaration was sent, it resonated across the Empire, a message of defiance from a species that had once seemed unremarkable, now demanding a future of its own making. The galaxy would soon understand that humanity had chosen its path, one that would change the course of galactic history and disrupt the stability that the Empire had carefully constructed over millennia. Humanity was no longer content to be a minor voice within the Empire's vast machinery. They were now a force in their own right, willing to risk everything for the sake of freedom. The declaration of war from humanity hit the Galactic Empire like a shockwave, disrupting the calm that had endured for millennia. As the message spread across the Empire's vast networks, it sparked immediate reactions of disbelief, confusion, and indignation. For thousands of years, the Empire's authority had gone unchallenged, maintaining what they considered a golden age of peace and stability. That a minor species, one the Empire had barely regarded, would dare to defy them was inconceivable to the Empire's leadership. Humans, who had been so cooperative and compliant, had suddenly emerged as the galaxy's most unexpected threat. The initial response from the Empire was dismissive. They viewed humanity's rebellion as a minor insurrection, a fleeting challenge that could be quashed swiftly. High-ranking officials and military strategists regarded humanity's declaration as an act of naivety rather than a legitimate threat. They assumed that humans, a species with limited resources and a small military presence, would be easily subdued. Orders were issued to mobilize fleets near human territories, with the intent to stamp out the rebellion quickly and restore order before it spread. To the Empire, this would be nothing more than a reminder of the consequences of disobedience. Across the galaxy, alien species responded with a mix of astonishment and curiosity. The idea that humans, who had integrated so quietly, would break 4,000 years of peace sent ripples through the galactic community. Many species struggled to understand humanity's motivations. Some assumed that humans had been mistreated, though the Empire's records painted a picture of cooperation and shared prosperity. Others speculated that humanity had hidden ambitions, that they had bided their time and waited for the right moment to reveal their true intentions. Whatever the reason, humanity's declaration became the focal point of galactic conversation, sparking debates, fears, and whispers of admiration. The Empire proceeded with its usual confidence, dispatching a fleet to human space with the intent of delivering a swift and decisive blow. They planned to remind humanity, and any other species considering dissent, of the Empire's unbreakable authority. The admiral overseeing the operation anticipated a quick victory, expecting humanity to capitulate once they saw the full force of the Empire's military might. However, as the fleet approached human territory, they encountered something unexpected. Humanity had not only prepared for their arrival but had set a series of traps that disrupted the Empire's advance. Humanity's strategy defied everything the Empire knew about warfare. Rather than meeting the Empire's fleet head-on, humans used guerrilla tactics, exploiting their knowledge of the terrain and employing hit-and-run maneuvers that wore down the Empire's forces. They attacked with precision, targeting supply lines, communication relays, and key ships, leaving the larger fleet disoriented and struggling to regroup. The Empire's forces, trained for large-scale engagements and accustomed to enemies surrendering upon first sight, were unprepared for the relentless unpredictability of human tactics. Reports from the front lines revealed the extent of humanity's ingenuity. Empire commanders, accustomed to the strict, methodical strategies that had kept the galaxy in check, found themselves frustrated by humanity's fluid and adaptive approach. Humans made use of unconventional weapons, employed electronic warfare to scramble signals, and executed rapid strikes that left the Empire's fleets vulnerable. Alien observers, watching from a distance, were captivated by humanity's tenacity. Here was a species fighting with purpose, one that refused to be cowed by the Empire's sheer size and might. The Empire's officials, who had once dismissed humanity as a minor threat, now scrambled to adapt. Meetings were held, strategies revised, and reinforcements dispatched. The Empire's response was swift and severe. They ramped up their efforts, determined to crush this unexpected resistance. However, with every wave of reinforcements, humanity adapted, evolving its tactics to counter the Empire's adjustments. It was a game of constant adaptation, a war of strategy and resilience that forced the Empire into a prolonged conflict it had never anticipated. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched in awe as humanity held its ground. Alien species who had long accepted the Empire's rule found themselves questioning the power dynamics that had defined their lives. Some were inspired by humanity's courage, seeing them as a symbol of defiance against a force that had, for centuries, held the galaxy in a grip of control. Others feared the repercussions, worrying that humanity's rebellion might disrupt the delicate balance of peace they had come to rely on. Yet, whether supportive or wary, all eyes remained fixed on the conflict, observing as humanity defied the expectations of a galaxy that had underestimated them. In response, the Empire intensified its efforts to suppress the rebellion, employing tactics it hadn't used in centuries. Propaganda campaigns were launched, portraying humanity as reckless dissidents who threatened galactic stability. The Empire's leaders spoke of humanity as a rogue element, dangerous to the well-being of all species under its rule. But despite these efforts, humanity's message continued to resonate. Their declaration of war was a cry for autonomy, a statement that peace without freedom was not worth preserving. Even as the Empire sought to paint them as villains, humanity's cause found silent support among those who saw echoes of their own desires for self-determination. The Empire's frustration grew as humanity continued to resist. Each victory humanity claimed, however small, chipped away at the perception of the Empire's invincibility. Humanity's resilience became a symbol of strength, a force that defied the Empire's expectations and demanded acknowledgement. Empire officials, once certain of their supremacy, now faced the unsettling reality that they could not easily crush this rebellion. Humanity's unexpected defiance forced the Empire to confront a truth it had long ignored: peace enforced by control would always be fragile, vulnerable to the will of those who valued freedom above submission. As the conflict continued, the Empire began to reassess its approach. Humanity's declaration of war had upended the status quo, challenging not only the Empire's military might but the ideological foundation on which its peace was built. This was no longer a simple matter of quelling a rebellion; it had become a confrontation of values, a battle over what it meant to rule, to live, and to thrive. Humanity's determination to fight for its own future became a reminder to the galaxy that even the most enduring systems of control could be challenged. In time, the Empire would come to see humanity not as a mere nuisance but as a formidable adversary, one that had dared to defy an order that had gone unquestioned for thousands of years. Humanity's declaration was more than an act of rebellion; it was a call for change, a refusal to accept a peace that demanded silence and submission. And as humanity fought on, their cause reverberated throughout the galaxy, a reminder that even the most minor voice could disrupt the most powerful empire when fueled by the unyielding desire for freedom. Humanity's unconventional tactics threw the Empire into disarray. Used to maintaining order through overwhelming force and predictable engagements, the Empire found itself struggling against a species that refused to play by its rules. Human forces struck swiftly, avoiding direct confrontation and instead targeting strategic weaknesses, supply chains, relay stations, and vulnerable outposts. Each strike was meticulously calculated to create disruption, leaving the Empire scrambling to respond to a threat it could barely comprehend. The Empire had always relied on its immense scale and strength, yet here was a foe that used precision and adaptability as weapons, turning every engagement into a test of wits. To the Empire's dismay, humanity's tactics went beyond mere combat. They launched a campaign of psychological warfare, carefully calculated to exploit the Empire's greatest weakness: its unyielding adherence to protocol. Humans spread misinformation, making it nearly impossible for the Empire to predict where the next strike would land. Through covert signals and scrambled transmissions, they crafted an illusion of a far larger and more widespread force, compelling the Empire to overextend itself as it attempted to chase shadows. Humanity had transformed its smaller numbers into an advantage, forcing the Empire's military machine to act against its own strengths. Reports from the front lines painted a picture of confusion within the Empire's ranks. Fleet commanders, unaccustomed to such fluid and unpredictable warfare, struggled to adjust. Their attempts to capture or corner human forces were consistently outmaneuvered, with human ships vanishing into deep space or slipping through weak points in the Empire's formations. The rigid structure of the Empire's hierarchy, once a source of strength, became a liability, as it hampered swift decision-making. Orders had to pass through numerous layers of command, while humanity operated with agility, able to pivot and adapt in real time. Alien species across the galaxy, long accustomed to the Empire's unchallenged dominance, watched in astonishment. For centuries, the Empire had symbolized unbreakable order, a power so vast that resistance seemed futile. Yet now, they saw humanity wielding innovation and ingenuity as weapons, proving that size and tradition could be undermined by adaptability. To many, this was a revelation, an example of how resistance could arise even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Humanity's defiance resonated deeply, inspiring quiet conversations among other species who had long felt constrained under the Empire's control. Despite humanity's unexpected success, the Empire was far from defeated. Angered and increasingly desperate, Empire officials unleashed harsher measures, doubling down on their efforts to reassert control. They deployed advanced surveillance systems, seeking to track humanity's movements with greater precision. New policies of suppression were enforced on worlds suspected of supporting humanity's cause, creating an atmosphere of fear among those who sympathized with their defiance. Yet these tactics only fueled humanity's resolve. Each act of repression became another rallying point, strengthening the message that humanity was fighting not just for its own freedom, but for a future free from the Empire's oppressive reach. Within humanity's ranks, morale soared. The knowledge that they were challenging an empire once thought unassailable gave them a fierce sense of purpose. Every victory, no matter how small, reinforced their commitment. Humanity's leaders continued to refine their strategies, embracing the unorthodox and the unexpected. They adapted to the Empire's responses, anticipating countermeasures and preparing contingencies for every possible reaction. This constant evolution kept the Empire on the defensive, unable to establish the upper hand they had once assumed would be inevitable. Humanity's rebellion became an exercise in resilience, a demonstration of their refusal to be subdued. The Empire's frustrations reached a boiling point, and with it came a realization among its leaders: humanity was not a threat that could be eliminated through brute force alone. Empire officials, for the first time, were forced to acknowledge that their own rigidity was a weakness humanity was exploiting. The realization struck deep, challenging the Empire's self-assured belief in the infallibility of its systems. Humanity had exposed cracks in the Empire's foundation, flaws that had been invisible during centuries of unquestioned rule. The Empire's leaders understood that they were facing a different kind of conflict, one that could not be resolved through intimidation or sheer might. In response, the Empire began to shift its tactics, attempting to mirror humanity's approach with flexible, decentralized units trained for rapid response. However, adapting centuries-old methods proved difficult. The Empire's command structure was deeply entrenched, and its officers, conditioned to follow strict protocols, struggled to execute the new tactics effectively. Humanity, on the other hand, thrived in the chaos. They had been shaped by a history of adaptability, and this war became an extension of their own cultural resilience, a test that revealed their ability to thrive under pressure. As the Empire's efforts to adjust continued to falter, whispers of admiration for humanity's courage began to spread openly across the galaxy. Species who had once viewed humanity as minor players now saw them as symbols of defiance. Humanity's struggle represented something universal, a reminder that the right to self-determination was worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Inspired by humanity's resilience, factions within other species began to reconsider their own positions, questioning whether they, too, might have the strength to challenge the status quo. For the Empire, the implications were troubling. What had started as a single-species rebellion now threatened to ignite broader dissent. Humanity had become more than just an opponent. They were a catalyst, a force that questioned the very foundation of the Empire's control. The Empire's rulers sensed the shift, recognizing that humanity's fight was as much about ideology as it was about sovereignty. It wasn't just a war of weapons, but a battle of principles, one that forced the Empire to confront uncomfortable truths about its own methods. As the conflict wore on, it became evident that a stalemate was emerging. Humanity's guerrilla tactics continued to frustrate the Empire's attempts at swift domination, while the Empire's sheer size prevented humanity from delivering a conclusive blow. The galaxy braced itself, unsure of which side would ultimately prevail. Yet, regardless of the outcome, one thing was certain: humanity's resistance had forever altered the fabric of the Empire's control. The myth of the Empire's unbreakable peace had been shattered, and with it came the realization that change was possible, that even the most powerful empires could be questioned. And so, humanity fought on, unyielding in their pursuit of freedom. Each skirmish, each act of defiance, was a statement, a reminder to the galaxy that true peace could not be enforced through control, that it had to be earned through respect and autonomy. The Empire's leaders could feel the momentum shifting, the steady erosion of the certainty that had sustained them for millennia. The Empire, faced with the unrelenting defiance of humanity, began to understand that brute force alone could not bring an end to this war. Every attempt to crush the rebellion had only strengthened humanity's resolve, each new suppression fueling their drive for autonomy. Slowly, the Empire's leadership came to a reluctant realization: humanity could not be subdued by the methods that had maintained peace for so many centuries. It was clear that they would need a different approach, one that addressed the root of humanity's rebellion rather than simply trying to silence it. In a last bid to bring the conflict to a close without further destabilizing the galaxy, the Empire extended a surprising offer: negotiations. This was not an act of submission, nor a gesture of goodwill, but rather a calculated decision made out of necessity. The Empire's leaders hoped to contain the damage humanity's defiance had inflicted, aware that their inability to end the rebellion had already sown seeds of doubt among other species. Humanity's defiance had sparked an ideological shift that could no longer be ignored, and negotiations were seen as a way to prevent further uprisings across the galaxy. For humanity, the offer of negotiations represented a moment of vindication. After months of struggle, it was proof that their stand had not been in vain. Yet, they approached the talks with caution. Humanity's leaders knew the Empire's reputation for coercion masked as diplomacy, and were wary of accepting terms that would undermine the very autonomy they had fought so hard to defend. Humanity entered the negotiations with clear demands. They wanted recognition of their sovereignty, a guarantee of self-governance, and the freedom to make decisions independent of the Empire's oversight. Anything less would render the struggle meaningless. The negotiations were tense, marked by a quiet battle of wills between two entities with fundamentally opposing ideologies. The Empire's representatives, accustomed to being the sole authority, found themselves in the unfamiliar position of compromise. Humanity's refusal to bend became a powerful statement in itself, a testament to their resolve. Each point of contention reflected the larger conflict that had brought them to this table: humanity's insistence on freedom against the Empire's need for control. For the first time, the Empire had to consider the limits of its own power, forced to recognize that peace could no longer be enforced through unquestioned authority. As the discussions wore on, humanity found that their victory extended beyond the battlefield. Their demand for self-determination resonated with other species, many of whom watched closely, seeing in humanity's defiance an echo of their own suppressed frustrations. Inspired by humanity's resolve, these species began to voice their own desire for greater autonomy within the Empire. Quietly, a movement began to grow, one that challenged the rigid structures that had governed the galaxy for millennia. Humanity's rebellion had ignited something deeper than anyone had anticipated: a widespread yearning for change, a shift toward freedom and self-governance. Under increasing pressure from its own subjects, the Empire had little choice but to make concessions. The terms of peace gradually took shape, acknowledging humanity's right to govern itself and allowing other species to pursue similar paths. Though the Empire maintained its influence, it was now tempered by new principles, a reluctant recognition of the need for flexibility in an ever-evolving galaxy. The peace that emerged from these negotiations was not the unyielding stability the Empire had once imposed, but a more dynamic order, one that allowed for diversity in governance and greater respect for individual sovereignty. The outcome marked a profound change in the galaxy's structure. Humanity's fight had redefined the meaning of peace, transforming it from a forced state of compliance into a more equitable balance between unity and independence. Alien civilizations began to adapt, embracing this new paradigm that allowed them to express their own identities without fear of reprisal. The Empire, though still powerful, had been forced to recognize its limitations, its authority softened by the understanding that true peace required the consent of the governed. In the aftermath, humanity became a symbol of resilience and courage across the galaxy. Their defiance had broken an era of stagnation, bringing about a transformation that many had believed impossible. Other species looked to humanity as an example, inspired by their determination to forge a future on their own terms. Humanity had not only secured its freedom but had redefined the Empire's legacy, leaving a mark on galactic history that would endure long after the last skirmish had faded. For humanity, the victory was more than a matter of sovereignty. It was a testament to their values, a confirmation of their belief in the right to self-determination. They had fought not just to break free from the Empire's control, but to prove that freedom and respect could coexist with peace. In doing so, they had shown the galaxy a new way forward, a model of unity that valued diversity rather than suppressing it. Humanity's struggle became a reminder that peace was not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice and the acknowledgement of each species' right to shape its own destiny. The galaxy moved forward with a renewed understanding of itself, reshaped by humanity's defiance. New alliances formed, built on mutual respect rather than fear. The Empire adapted to the changes it had once resisted, realizing that the stability of the future required a foundation of trust and cooperation. Humanity, once a minor player, had become a cornerstone of this new order, their influence felt in every corner of the galaxy. They had turned a moment of rebellion into a legacy of transformation, proving that even the most deeply entrenched powers could be changed by those who dared to challenge them. And so, humanity's stand against the Empire became legend, a story of a species that had defied an empire to reclaim its freedom, and, in doing so, had reshaped the course of history. They had shown the galaxy that true peace could only be achieved through respect and autonomy, and that even the most unbreakable empires could be compelled to evolve. Humanity's journey from a quiet member of the Empire to a symbol of hope was now etched in galactic memory, a reminder that the desire for freedom, once kindled, could not be extinguished. The galaxy would never be the same, forever marked by humanity's resolve and their unwavering belief in a future where peace was no longer enforced but earned.